Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to the A24 project here in the Nerd Party Network. My name is Lee Hutchison and we make our way through the A24 filmography and along the way bring you interviews with the talent involved. In our final episode of the year, we review Joanna Hogg's The Eternal Daughter. So Dallas, we've made it to the end of another year.
Another busy year. Actually, it was a surprisingly busy year for A24, I guess, clearing through the backlog of the pandemic, perhaps. But I think it was somewhere between like 10 to 15 new releases. I mean, let's be fair, some received a fuller release than others, but still, definitely, you'd be easily be able to get like a top five and possibly bottom five out of this year, so, and lots of highs and lows to discuss. And yeah, this one is something which I probably wasn't expecting. I mean, I was expecting it slightly more, unfortunately, because I think certain aspects have been spoiled for me before I managed to watch it. But I mean, a new Joanna Hogg film is always a pleasure. It's always a dark horse, you know.
Yeah, most definitely, and I'm looking forward to diving into this one. So, written and directed by Joanna Hogg, the author behind the Souvenirs Part 1 and 2 for A24 already, an artist and her elderly mother confront long-buried secrets when they return to a former family home, now a hotel haunted by its mysterious past. And that artist's name? One Julie Hart. So this is the latest in a run of A24 films yet to have a UK release date,
Of course.
which is even more infuriating considering this is very much a British film. It's British talent behind and in front of the camera. It's got funding from the BFI and the BBC, and as of time of recording, it is currently not got a date in the UK, which is incredibly frustrating. So Dallas, how did you see it? How are we able to discuss this for the first time today without having to torrent it?
Well, I had the pleasure of my iTunes account because I live in America.
We have lucked out big time having iTunes accounts, haven't we?
Yes. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend the London Film Festival because I think that has so far pretty much been the only screening, and I missed it by a couple of days in Venice as well. Actually, maybe I should say, oh no, I saw it in Venice. I saw it in the Venice Film Festival. Yeah, it's all good. No, I saw it on iTunes a couple of weeks ago for a very reasonable rental price, not PVOD.
Yeah, I remember that we had a bet about the price, and I must admit I got it right. So yeah, I think the
It's
next
no
one will be on you.
That's what it is.
No, yeah, you can pick up The Eternal Daughter for about $6 in iTunes at the moment, whereas kind of the Fablemans and a lot of those other sort of premium VODs are well into that price. Yeah. Though I did buy Tar last week for $10 from Reddit, so there's something to be said about that as well. But yeah, for me, I didn't catch it at Venice or on at VOD. I got it at the London Film Festival as part of a double bill of the that and White Noise, and it was very much a mind blow for me at the time because when I went into it, I'd heard sort of some murmurings about kind of the about the Eternal Daughter, but there was so much kind of big films kind of dropping, things like The Whale, for example, that were just sort of taking up some of the discussion and discourse, that The Eternal Daughters was sort of reduced to this kind of, it's a smaller film that's kind of going through the festival circuit. You know, you maybe see the odd review, but nothing kind of much is sticking out. So for me, when I heard at the beginning of the film, so I don't think it's safe to say it's a spoiler, is that the character that Tilda Swinton playing is Julie Hart, which for the Souvenir heads was the role that her younger daughter played in the Souvenir Part 1 and 2. My mind was blown that this was essentially going to be a postscript to the Souvenir films. I have a feeling, I think I accidentally ruined it for you by that revelation.
Yes, you might have. And then there was a few tweets and stuff when it dropped in America and stuff like that. People were saying that, I mean, this is, I mean, technically A24's first, is it, I guess it's an official trilogy because it's the same character across all three films. So, I mean, it's not the Souvenir Part 3. I mean, technically, you know, it could be probably entitled The Souvenir Part 3, The Eternal Daughter, if it so wished. But yes, no, I mean, at this point, we've only had, Trey Edward Schultz has done three films. He's the most prolific director at this point up until now, but each film has been an entirely separate story. This is the first, I guess, connected story across the films by A24. And in terms of the release, I'm guessing with A24 potentially putting up some of the major financing and distribution behind it, part of the deal was, well, we get to drop it first. We get to release it first, and we'll take care of the festivals and stuff like that. So I guess that's what it is. But yeah, no, I would have loved to have sort of been completely shocked as you were sort of going in and finding, I think it would have been like, when she sort of says her name at the reception desk or something, and then I would have been like, Julie Hart. That's no, that was the character from The Souvenir, wasn't it? And then I'll be like, oh, sneaky. But yes, no, and then of course she's also playing her. Tilda Swinton's playing her mother, which she played the role of in The Souvenir and The Souvenir Part 2. Tilda Swinton, of course, always up for playing multiple roles in a film, such as like Suspiria, etc. So yeah, no, it was nice to see these two characters again, and potentially now my memory's a bit foggy on The Souvenir Part 2, but is the dog the same dog as would have been in The Souvenir Part 2? I believe Tilda Swinton, the mother character, had a dog that lived in their house in The Souvenir Part 2. Is that right?
I can't remember what the dog in Eternal Daughter is called. Louis the dog, but I can't remember the name of the dog in The Souvenir. Oh, my mind's drawing a blank here. Yeah, I was very surprised by that, and it was just one of those ones. The fact that the Souvenir films, I don't necessarily know if they're popular or anything like that, but they've kind of warranted sort of a box set from A24, which is quite interesting when you consider their sort of Blu-ray output is like The Last Black Man in San Francisco, Lamb, Midsummer, Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, The Green Knight recently. So I was kind of a bit surprised. I was like, oh, The Souvenir must have enough interest that they've made a Blu-ray and a 4K box set of these kind of movies, which never felt like they made much of an impact in America. And even in the UK, it doesn't feel like they've made much of an impact outside of kind of fans of that kind of genre. I mean, what surprised me in retrospect is sort of just before Christmas, I treated myself to the Souvenir box set when A24 had their discount weekend in their shop, and there was a really good documentary on it with like sort of Martin Scorsese. It's about 45 minutes long, and it was actually really cool because we interviewed one of the cast earlier this year, and he spoke about, well, you don't kind of get a script, you get sort of this little book with images and thoughts and so on, and you could see some of that in this documentary. But Martin Scorsese was on excellent form, and he was sort of talking about his first time meeting Joanna Hogg, and he'd been sort of over in London shooting Hugo, and he picked up some films or was gifted some films from the BFI, and he watched kind of one of our early films. He didn't quite connect with it, but couldn't stop thinking about it and went back to it. And then the two of them met at a sort of a social event, kind of a couple months later. And Joanna Hogg was talking about, long before he produced or sort of executive produced in probably a very tenuous way the Souvenir films, she spoke about this gothic horror that she had pitched in mind. So between that, we got obviously the Souvenir films, and we finally come round to this gothic horror film that she'd sort of pitched to Scorsese, who is an executive producer on this film as well. So kind of thinking about them as a trilogy, it feels like, especially with part 2 and 1, and part 2 and Eternal Daughter, that there's a lot of talk about memories, very much on the nose about sort of memories. And that one, I mean, even the whole concept of The Souvenir is about these real life memories and experiences that Joanna Hogg experienced with a real life boyfriend. She's kind of kept a lot of that kind of quiet, but it is obvious that it is based on a very much a true story, and she's been working through that.
I think The Souvenir Part 2, I mean, I don't think it worked entirely for everyone, but it was a very bold gambit, which is then essentially retelling the events. Well, it shows Julie retelling the events of the first film through her making a film of it, but even then, the film of it is like a completely different version. It's like her imagination of how things potentially could have gone and stuff like that. The film that you think you see her making turns out to be something completely different, and it didn't work completely for me as well. I think I preferred part one to part two, but I admired the what she was going with that, and how you play with memory and truth versus fiction and stuff like that, and how you can interpret things in different ways. So yeah, sort of that then sort of feeds nicely into this as well, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, very much that sort of first two films, it's about her memories, her experiences. And this one, she sort of spoke about how that she wanted to kind of she spoke about how she wanted to sort of preserve her memories of her mother, but it's not sort of quite her mother's memories. Again, it's sort of her own kind of thoughts and imagination, which sort of seems to tie these two together. And yeah, I thought that was quite interesting as well, to sort of just explore that kind of theme that sort of ran through these films about sort of memories, looking back, how we remember things. And for me, I love the first Souvenir. I enjoyed quite a lot the second one, but it didn't quite click with me as much as the second one. But I found on repeat viewings that the second one has is now up there with the second one in terms of just some of the bold decisions that they make in that movie. And I'm kind of planning to maybe do a sort of a trilogy day sort of over this kind of little winter period, I think.
Oh, maybe Picture House will do it over the new year. You can do the Lord of the Rings extended edition trilogy, and then the next day do the Souvenir trilogy on the big screen.
Sounds good to me. So, when you probably think about the Souvenir, you are a million miles away from horror. What did you kind of make of this gothic horror look, Dallas? Like, there's often the tedious conversations surrounding A24 of elevated horror. Is this something that gets considered that, or is this sort of a very much more kind of different take on horror?
I mean, it would probably fall into the elevated horror. Well, I'm doing the inverted commas sort of motion with my fingers here, in that it is not your traditional jump scare horror sort of things. It very much, I would say, sort of is into the sort of hereditary sort of style of a family drama set within the horror genre, again with the inverted commas here, where it's about two people trying to reconnect with something that happened in the past, and what that means for them, and it just so happens to be that they're in this place where something else might be happening. They return to what was apparently a family home in the past, which is this giant sort of country mansion, which has now been turned into a hotel. And part of me was thinking it just made the sort of first film ever so slightly more ridiculous, in that Julie is wanting to go up to, what was it, Sunderland, and look at all the people who are unemployed and stuff like that. And she was being financed through film school by her parents, and then it turns out her parents and family were even richer than we even thought. They used to have this old house, although potentially it's hinted at that they may have fallen on hard times and clearly maybe had to sell it, or perhaps it was lost through the death of someone in the past as well. So it did sort of, I was like, okay, right. But I mean, I don't know if Joanna Hogg herself, if that part was true about her family, and that they had this rich country estate that's turned into a hotel. Who knows? But they go there, and it's meant to be for a birthday trip away for her mum. But I guess the narcissistic artist that lives within all great directors. There's an ulterior motive, and Julie is trying to is I guess kind of like, I guess we could go. We'll go into the Shining references now. It's like Jack Torrance who's come away to do a bit of writing. She's stuck on a new script. She's wanting to write a movie about her mum, because obviously her previous films have been semi-autobiographical, and she's using the time to try and reconnect with her mum, even to the point of surreptitiously recording their conversations and stuff in order to get material to write a new script. But it doesn't things aren't clicking as well as she would hope, I think. But in terms of the look of the house, I mean, yeah, it's a fantastic sort of thing. It reminded me slightly of, I think, if there'd been a bit more snow, it would remind me of the beginning of Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, that shot in the trailer where they're sort of driving up the long, secluded wooded drive up to this great dark country estate, because they arrive, they've got to arrive during the middle of the night, as you do in all these things. And I really liked the use of lighting in the thing. They basically used natural light for most of the shots, but what they did is they had this creepy sort of green effect, which I thought was a great touch, because it came from the emergency lights, which you have to have now in places like that. So it's an unnatural light, because it's, you wouldn't have had something like that in this old sort of country estate, but they've had to for health and safety regulations. But I thought it added a nice sort of unnatural uneasiness to proceedings.
Yeah, for me, I'm on the opposite side. I really liked it as sort of like a bit of a. I think I've mentioned it before. I like the kind of the human horror element where humans are really horrible to other humans, and this for me made me really kind of squirm in my seat at sort of how uncomfortable it was. Like even from the beginning, I felt so uncomfortable, and I think she is definitely one of A24's best supporting characters. Was the receptionist, like,
oh, yes,
the really stiltedness, the awkwardness between everyone, how rude, awkward things were, like that gets under my skin in a way that like burning humans and plague ravaged countries can never do in terms of movies. Like that was like mine of like, oh my god, I can't bear to watch, and so on. I just loved all the interactions with the receptionist. The type of horror where they're trying to decide on their dinner for the night, and then she just like goes away, and then about 20 seconds later she comes back and just kicks a bag in the process.
Carly Sophia Davies. I think I said to you after I'd watched it that it's one of my favourite supporting turns of the year. I think just from the start. I mean, thankfully I've never experienced firsthand service from someone like that, but I just know the type, from the people who put up these awful TripAdvisor reviews telling them, oh, we just felt so inconvenienced by this person and stuff like that. And it's clearly, they've arrived late at night, she's on the night shift, she clearly doesn't want to be there, and she's making all these like things, the booking doesn't exist, then she's got to do it, and she's just like, so exasperated. And you just know something, she's clearly straight out of school, or like doing this as another job, to do university or something, and she clearly doesn't want to be there. But at the same time, she's clearly doing it on purpose, because she's like, oh, I don't know if I can get you that first floor room. And then it's like Tilda Swinton's character looks up and says, but all the keys are there. It's like there doesn't seem to be anyone else staying there, but she's being purposely rude and belligerent just because she can. And I thought that was great. And yeah, like the dinner scenes where she's just like, what do you want? And then it's like they haven't decided. She's like, oh, she walks away, and then like 20 seconds later she comes back, have you decided yet? And stuff like that. And yeah, no, it's one of my favorite supporting performances. And yeah, I think it would be great to get her thoughts one time, if we can get her on the podcast, to see what it was like to film in that, because she's pretty much one of the only two other characters in the film. The hotel is very empty, so it's just Julie and her mother, the receptionist, and then the night porter, I believe, who inhabit the hotel, so to speak. Although there might be a couple of other figures, maybe.
Yeah, one of I think the supporting characters we've got to give a huge shout out to is the fog machine. That it certainly did its bit in the film as well.
It can go forwards and backwards on command. It's amazing. They must have borrowed it from John Carpenter.
One of the things I loved about this film was sort of, and it's almost, you can definitely call this an A24 Christmas film, but even if you just took it on this level alone...
Did they say Merry Christmas at the end? I was like, boom! And we're recording at the right time, just after Christmas.
Exactly, and what even made it more of a Christmas movie, and I'm sure so many people are
Families
relating to this
fighting.
up and down the country. Yeah, very much. Like, there was a really good quote from Tilda Swinton when she was talking about the release of this film, and she was talking about her and Joanna Hogg, that we talked a lot about mothers and daughters of our generation and the chasm between them. However much affection, however much genuine love there is also a very different way of communicating between that generation and ours. I know that because I now have a daughter of a similar age to the age I was, and started thinking about this. She's 24. Our relationship, my daughter and mine's, is really different. There's a different kind of understanding and sharing, and I think that I think we've all probably been in that experience before, of the birthday dinner, which is probably one of my highlighted favorite scenes of the year. I know a lot of people have been picking theirs, but for me, the birthday dinner of that, oh, I'm not hungry. Well, I won't eat too, and then everything just spirals from there. And there's almost that relatable element amongst all of this, where you're like, oh yeah, we've all been there, and it just makes everything more awkward and painful to watch. And I think that's the element of this, amongst this sort of gothic horror element, is a very relatable family drama as well.
Yeah, and of course the beautiful moment of when the receptionist comes over, do you want the cake now? And then the daughter gets really mad. No, you're not supposed to tell her about the cake. The cake's meant to be a surprise, but the receptionist's like, whatever. I'm so bored of all this. Yeah, no, I think that is the scene. Just like, yeah, like you say, I'm not that hungry, but it's like, but it's your birthday dinner. You got to have something. Oh no, I'll be fine. You just have something, and I'll watch you eat. And I'm not gonna have something if you're just gonna be watching me eating. No, I'll order later. And it's like, no, you should have something. It's just like, oh god, it's like, yeah, it's like one of those scenes. I'm just thinking of like that bit from After Sun, where everyone sort of roared at laughter at the festival when the dad picks up the young boy at the side of the pool and goes, "Stop it! You just make it. You're making a fool of yourself. Look, everyone's looking at us." And like everyone laughed because that was something that everyone instantly recognized. And I think a scene like that is something that everyone has either witnessed in a restaurant or has experienced firsthand. And I think it's that sort of connection that you get to a script or something like that is what helps it sort of resonate with audiences. This, even though the characters themselves, who are from a completely different sort of upbringing and background from someone like myself, there's still elements like that that hit home as a relatable family drama. Yeah.
What did you make of Johanna Hogg's kind of horror direction in this? One thing I really loved about this, and I say this with all the love in the world, is that its limitations made it a huge strength. It reminded me of like Twilight Zone, or even like a Star Trek from the kind of 1960s, where you have like one actor playing sort of two roles, almost probably like the sinister kind of, evil character, and sometimes you rarely saw the two of them in the same shot. And I really loved how you had everything just felt so even more stilted and awkward, of like, you would just cut to Julie kind of talking to Rosalind, and it would just be like single shot, cut to the shot. You rarely ever saw them apart from sort of one shot together in the same shot, and it really, you're sitting there thinking at the first time, going, oh, like they've clearly done this in a way, low budget, that's kind of the whole thing behind it. But I think it worked to its strength to make it so awkward with all these kind of single shots, and perhaps how the kind of characters were interacting. But also, I suppose it sets up quite nicely the twist to come.
Yeah, no, I think it clearly was a stylistic choice from Joanna Hogg. Obviously, part of it would have been to do with budget. You would have been into sort of a Moon type situation where you'd have had to have like a body double and then sort of insert sort of film it twice and then splice the footage together and stuff like that. But no, I think it works. Probably in a sort of way, because it was sort of financed by BFI and BBC. It does have that sort of almost sort of 60s, 70s sort of, not quite Hammer horror vibe, but sort of like a almost, I guess, like a Christmas ghost story sort of special that was directed for the BBC, something like that Mark Gatiss from League of Gentlemen and Sherlock and stuff has been doing over the last few years. He's been doing a lot of those sort of specials where they're based on sort of like classic ghost stories, like Woman in Black or sort of Edgar Allan Poe stories and things like that. So I think it works, and especially with the setting is very it just works beautifully. And I think, like you say, it's sort of less is more. There's a very sort of restrained approach. It's like very sort of slow, sort of tracking shots down corridors. It's like there's no real desire to sort of explain what is going on. It's like it will be revealed when it is revealed. It's like, so it's up to the audience to sort of their it, like when she's walking around the gardens or she's walking through corridors at night, it's stuff like that. Your eyes get drawn to different areas of darkness, and like you're looking for where the potential danger or intrigue is going to be. So she doesn't rely on jump scares of cats jumping out anywhere or something like that. It's very much sort of all about atmosphere and stuff like that, and that works very well. Whether it's just a door very slowly opening, or a sort of dog barking at something that it sees that no one else can see, and stuff like that. I think that's what makes it work. It's very much the fear comes from the character, mostly from Julie, because she's the one I think that experiences the most of the. Again, I don't think she can even explain what she is potentially seeing at times, but she just feels that there's something not quite right about the place that they're in, which probably leads us on to the spoiler section of the podcast.
Absolutely. So if you've not had the chance to see Eternal Daughter yet, well, you just unfortunately have to wait for it to be released in the UK or get an iTunes.
Hopefully at the Glasgow Film Festival. Glasgow Film Festival is still time.
Yeah, that's my bet is on that it will be in February, January.
Find out if Glee is right on the 24th of January when they announce the lineup.
I can't wait to find out about that. But yeah, obviously it leads to a bit of a twist. So Dallas, when we kind of briefly spoke the other day, you said you saw the twist coming. Did you feel the twist was a little bit telegraphed, or how did you sort of see this revelation come?
Was it a bit telegraphed? It's difficult to know if it was a twist or not.
I should add, for those that maybe, I suppose I've just been very vague there, we are going to spoil this. Rosalind was very much a figment of Julie's imagination, and she never kind of existed within this sort of film reality. She's taken her mother's ghost along with her, and yeah, along with all sort of her fears and anxieties and all these unanswered questions that she had about her family and mother. So, Dallas, did you know that she was a ghost?
Yes. Pretty much from the moment they checked into the bedroom, I was pretty much convinced that the mother was not alive. Just in the way that when they sort of, she took, the receptionist sort of took Tilda Swinton's Julie up to the room on her own, but then the next shot was them both were in the room. And I mean, if you've watched like ghost stories and stuff like that, or something like A Sixth Sense or whatever, you're probably thinking, you're looking almost for something that is amiss, and you're thinking something's not quite right. I'm pretty sure that she's a ghost. The receptionist never makes eye contact with the mother, never really seems to acknowledge her, although that it does then question if Julie is she ordering 2 meals every time, or is she only having one but she's thinking she's ordered 2. I mean, she keeps saying we, but I guess she has a dog with her. So, I mean, technically, yes, that would, is the room ready for us? There's her and her dog. So, I mean, technically that could be 2. But, I mean, there is a hint at the end that the receptionist is perhaps part of the reason for her frustration at the character is she clearly knows that this woman is not completely right in the head. She's clearly going through something, and she wishes that she's okay at the end of the film, but for the rest of it she seems really sort of annoyed by her behaviour throughout the entire film. But Yeah, no, I was pretty convinced that she was a ghost from the outset, and which is of course again sort of leads into the why the two of them are never in the same shot together, and you've got that the final reveal at the birthday dinner when she blows out the candles on the cake, and you get the wide shot of the table, and it's only her at the table. I did sort of second guess myself with the introduction of the night porter character, who Bill, who was working in the hotel. He was there, still working there. His wife and had worked there as well, but he was now staying on working there even past her death. But he apparently was speaking to the mother character and stuff like that. So, but then I guess in a similar way to I guess The Shining, where you know ghosts who are in the hotel sort of maybe stay on and can interact with those who are susceptible to that kind of thing. Um, he must have been another ghostly character as well, and yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to get your perspective because there's a scene where sort of Julie's holding the hand of the mother in the hotel bedroom, and it's like, did the mother die in the hotel? Was Julie revisiting this hotel because they'd been previously, and that's where she passed away? What was in the plastic bag? There's lots of questions. Lots of questions.
Yeah, I kind of probably took it as that she had kind of died there, and sort of they probably had gone through one of these sorts of awkward, what we kind of see play out of, what would she have done differently, I
I
suppose
guess
there's always
that's
those
probably why
elements
she
of.
wanted that particular room, was because that was the room that the mother had passed away in. So
Yeah, and I think for me, I suppose we spoke about the fog. I mean, it's almost impossible to kind of mention sort of the fog plays that kind of pivotal kind of role in the end of like the fog lifts not just on Julie but on this sort of hotel grounds that I think in that moment
the brain fog lifts. She can write her script. It all starts coming out. Everything's clear. Would have been interested to hear the tape in the morning, just to play back. Is it her speaking to herself as her mother, sort of Norman Bates style, or is it just completely blank? But again, that would probably ruin the mystery, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and it's one of those things. They're fun to guess afterwards, but I think it works as a kind of the decisions that they kind of go down and sort of that. I guess that idea of as you kind of watch these things, people get older, whether it's grandparents, parents, and you're left with all those questions that you would want to ask or that you regretted never getting to know. That these are people you probably spend your entire life with, but sometimes you feel like, do I actually really know these people? They're the good sides of them, the challenges, their family side, and I suppose there's that element of when you're trying to write a script as well. In this case, is there this element of guilt that she has about sort of being able to kind of write her mother's story properly and truly, or and probably the element of that of is she actually the right person to tell this story at all? And you can see that there's a bit of kind of guilt through the film and uncomfortableness about sort of this journey that she's kind of taking to do that.
And because at one point they do have a discussion about she brought her mum back to this place, which apparently she believed she had fond memories of, but then it turns out they'd basically sort of come here sort of during a time that involved like a family death and stuff like that. I think it was like an aunt, a great aunt or something like that, which is what I think at one point Julie believes the ghostly figure at the window to be, or it's implied maybe to the audience that's what it is, but obviously it was her own mother and stuff like that. So again, she sort of misremembered or was just unaware of the truth behind this particular place. It's about you can only go with what you know, and she's clearly sort of misremembering stuff like that, but it's all about unlocking and working through her own grief, and that's what all these elevated horrors potentially are. The Babadook, Hereditary, is about Tony Collette's character. Again, that was a film with a very successful misdirect, thanks to the trailer. About we were thinking it was one particular film, but it turned out to be something completely different. I think if the film hadn't actually been sort of marketed and described as a sort of gothic horror or ghost story or something like that, I think I would have been less inclined to be second guessing every sort of decision and stuff like that. I mean, since I've watched a lot of horror films and a lot of ghost stories and stuff like that, I think I was more pre-inclined to be looking out for something amiss. Potentially, just an audience going to see this film, unaware of what it was about at the London Film Festival or something. I expect there probably would be a bit more of sort of shock and surprise at the reveal as it went on. But I mean, about yourself, did you cotton on quickly, or did you have an idea?
Yeah, I had a rough idea. As I say, sometimes for better or worse with these films, I tend to kind of just let them wash over me as opposed to kind of trying to guess where things are going to go or what the twist will be. I mean, it did feel like I wouldn't be surprised if that's where it went, but I was kind of very much kind of caught up in this atmosphere and the tension that was kind of going on, and just being really surprised by this whole thing being connected to sort of the souvenir movies, and just that was what was kind of going through my mind.
That was a bigger twist
when perhaps more other people were guessing. Yeah, that was the bigger twist for me, and so on, and how wildly different and unexpected that was, and just that was a rare treat for me to get to experience that. And I'm glad that we have a trilogy of films from Johanna Hogg to talk about. And yeah, I can't wait to see what she does next. And I would definitely recommend people check out her the documentary on the Souvenir Blu-ray that you can get from America. It's region free as well, so you can kind of import it into the UK. There's audio commentaries as well I've yet to listen into, but afterwards I was surprised, like, oh, I would have bought the Souvenir plus the Eternal Daughter box set if that came out, but hey ho, what can you do? So I'll just have to wait for that one to come out eventually.
There was one other little fact which I noticed. I didn't notice it until the very end, I think, because most of the film is sort of shot, I think, at night time, apart from obviously right at the very end of the film when she's leaving. And I noticed that the door, there was a name plaque on the door. The room that they stayed in was called Rosebud. Now, any film fan worth their salt will know that Rosebud is obviously linked to Citizen Kane, and the whole plot of Citizen Kane is about trying to figure out what Rosebud is. And spoiler, it's a sled. But Rosebud is obviously, it's Citizen Kane's final word. It's, what does it mean? And it was about his sort of lost childhood. It was about the search for what made him him. And obviously I thought that was a nice touch to have that, and that, Julie has returned to this place and the room where her mother potentially died in order to work through something and find closure and stuff like that. So it turns out Rosebud was the answer there as well, which I thought was a nice touch, Joanna. Well done.
Yeah. So to kind of wrap up our last episode of the year, what's been your favourite A24 film of 2022? It feels like there's kind of three kind of films would probably be in big contention for a lot of people. What's your number one?
For me, I think up until sort of August, I was thinking, well, nothing's probably going to knock Everything Everywhere All at Once off the top of the charts, but it has to be After Sun for me. The Under Pressure sequence, I think, is still floats around in my head on a pretty much daily basis. So yeah, no, it has stuck with me more than any particular sequence this year. And yeah, I mean, it has been a very strong year for A24. Obviously, I mean, there's a couple of other films which have been released in the US, not that haven't been out in the UK. I know that you weren't particularly keen on The Whale as much as I was, but I'll blame it on the Venice syndrome. But for me, yeah, no, it has to be After Sun.
Yeah, it's After Sun for me as well. I mean, yeah, it's been a little bit of an up and down year for sort of every kind of After Sun. You get a kind of maybe like a God's Creatures.
So when you finish saving the world, that's how we started, and then
yeah. And we'll finally get to review that next month. That'll be our big next review, unless the inspection comes down in price on iTunes USA. That's another film I saw at London, but I'm waiting for
Boxing Day sale, maybe.
maybe. So yeah, it's definitely After Sun for me, and we have a kind of in the coming
and
weeks.
Not just because it's Scottish, we're not biased here.
I think it's safe to say that I didn't ever anticipate it making the breakthrough that it did when we saw Edinburgh. Like, I thought this is a really good film that people will like if they see it, but to see it topping so many charts and lists from publications has been great. Yeah.
Guardian's Film of the Year. Can it break through to the Oscars? Still waiting. I would love it too. It's going to be an uphill struggle given it's the little film that could, but it's going to be interesting to see how A24. I think they're currently recalibrating in terms of. I think a lot of films are recalibrating in terms of what they're going to be pushing forward. I think certainly after Venice, The Whale was like, oh yeah, no, The Whale's they're going to be pushing it in all categories. But now that seems to have kind of, apart from Brendan Fraser's performance, I think it's sort of fading slightly. So Everything Everywhere All at Once is their main horse. They're looking for their next Best Picture winner after Moonlight. They're looking to get back some of the glory that they've kind of lost to Neon and Apple TV over the last couple of years. Coda, was that this year? Was that the Best Picture winner this year? I still can't believe that happened. Can everyone remember Coda, that film? Yeah. But hey, it's not an A24 film, so we don't care about it.
Exactly. Well, thanks everyone for listening and joining us on the adventure this year. We'll have a couple of After Sun interviews in the coming few weeks, and then we'll be kind of coming along with a few more A24 movies to review in the new year. So thanks everyone for listening, and happy holidays.